You don't belong in this room. You don't belong in this room. This is an exclusive dinner for people who matter.
You don't belong in this room. Malcolm Reed said it loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough to make sure I felt it. I was holding a tray of champagne flutes when his eyes locked onto mine. Cold, deliberate, meant to cut. This is an exclusive dinner, he continued, adjusting his gold cufflinks. For people who matter. I felt 12 pairs of eyes on me. Not one person looked away in discomfort. Not one person corrected him. His fiancée, Olivia Hawthorne, laughed behind her hand. As two board members nodded slowly, like he'd just stated a fact. The restaurant manager stood frozen near the wall, and I realized something that made my stomach turn. They all agreed with him. I was just the help, the outsider, the mistake someone made by letting me through the door. You don't belong in this room. Malcolm Reed said it loud enough for everyone to hear, loud enough to make sure I felt it. I was holding a tray of champagne flutes when his eyes locked onto mine. Cold, deliberate, meant to cut. This is an exclusive dinner, he continued, adjusting his gold cufflinks. For people who matter. I felt 12 pairs of eyes on me. Not one person looked away in discomfort. Not one person corrected him. His fiancée, Olivia Hawthorne, laughed behind her hand. As two board members nodded slowly, like he'd just stated a fact. The restaurant manager stood frozen near the wall, and I realized something that made my stomach turn. They all agreed with him. I was just the help, the outsider, the mistake someone made by letting me through the door. Let me back up for a second. Virelli's Steakhouse doesn't serve walk-ins. You need a reservation made 3 months in advance, or a last name that opens doors most people will never see. God, tonight was different. The entire private dining room had been reserved. 12 seats, closed doors, investors, political donors, and power brokers celebrating the merger between Hawthorne Logistics and Reed Global Holdings. Malcolm Reed was the golden heir, sharp suit, sharper tongue, heir to a shipping empire worth billions. Olivia Hawthorne was his perfect match, daughter of Theodore Hawthorne, a man whose name appeared on buildings across 3 states. Their engagement announcement was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tonight was the celebration dinner, and I was assigned to serve them. I'd been working at Virelli's for 8 months, long enough to know how to move through a room without being noticed, long enough to understand that silence was safer than speaking. But Malcolm noticed me the moment I walked in, not because I did anything wrong, because he wanted to. "What's your name?" he asked when I poured his water. Barbara," I said quietly. "Barbara," he repeated slowly, like he was testing how it sounded. "That's plain." Olivia smirked. "Fitting." I kept my face neutral and moved to the next guest. Malcolm leaned back in his chair, watching me. "Where are you from, Barbara?" "Atlanta originally." "Ah." He nodded knowingly. "That explains it." I didn't ask what it was. I didn't need to. It happened 40 minutes into the dinner, and I was refilling Malcolm's wine glass when he shifted suddenly in his seat. His elbow knocked the glass from my hand. Crimson wine splashed across the white tablecloth. Drops hit his Italian leather shoes. The room went silent. "Look what you did," Malcolm said, his voice sharp but controlled. My heart sank. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me—" "Are you always this clumsy?" Olivia interrupted, dabbing her napkin dramatically, even though nothing had touched her. "I'll get a towel," I said quickly. "Oh no, huh?" Malcolm's voice stopped me cold. "Clean it now." I hesitated. "Now, Barbara." The way he said my name, like it tasted bitter in his mouth, made something twist inside my chest. I grabbed the linen napkin from the table and knelt beside his chair, pressing the fabric against the spilled wine on the floor. Phones came out, not obviously, just slight movements. A woman 2 seats down angled her phone toward me. A man near the door pretended to check a message. They were recording. Now I finished wiping the floor and started to stand. "Wait." Malcolm lifted his fork. There was a small smudge of sauce near the tines. "Clean this too," he said softly. My hands froze. He wasn't asking me to get a clean fork. He was telling me to wipe his dirty one, while I was still on my knees. Someone coughed. Another person shifted uncomfortably in their seat, but no one said a word. "Malcolm, maybe we should just—" Olivia started. She spilled wine on $1,000 pair of shoes." Malcolm cut her off smoothly. The least she can do is finish the job properly. He held the fork closer to my face. I looked up at him. His eyes were cold, amused, waiting to see if I'd break. And for just a second, I considered it. Walking out, quitting, telling him exactly what I thought of him and his expensive shoes and his entitled cruelty. But I had rent due in 5 days. My mother's medical bills were piling up. As in jobs like this, jobs that paid enough to matter, didn't come easy for women like me. So I reached for the fork. That's when I felt it. Someone watching, not the way the others were watching, with pity or discomfort or quiet satisfaction. This was different. I glanced toward the head of the table. A man sat there, perfectly still, tailored black suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. Dark eyes that hadn't left Malcolm since the wine spilled. His nameplate read, Mr. Hahn. He hadn't spoken once all night, but now he was staring at Malcolm like he'd just made a very serious mistake. I didn't know who this man was, but something about the way he watched made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Malcolm didn't notice him. He was too busy enjoying his power. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a room full of people who saw you being humiliated and did nothing? Have you ever felt invisible while everyone was staring right at you? If you have, you already know how this felt. And if you've ever wondered what happens when someone finally fights back, not with words, but with power, then hit subscribe right now, because what happened in the next 60 seconds changed everything, and I mean everything. I stood up instead of taking the fork, slowly, deliberately. I'll bring you a clean one, I said, keeping my voice steady, as Malcolm's smile disappeared. Excuse me? A clean fork, I repeated. I'll bring it from the kitchen. The room held its breath. Olivia's eyes widened. The board member next to her stopped mid-sip of his wine. Malcolm leaned forward, voice dropping low enough that only I could hear. You'll do what I say, or you're fired. Do you understand me? I met his eyes. I understand perfectly, but I didn't move. For 3 long seconds, we just stared at each other. Then a voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. That won't be necessary. Everyone turned. The man at the head of the table, Mr. Hahn, stood smoothly, like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The entire room shifted toward him. Malcolm recovered quickly, forcing a polite smile. Mr. Hahn, this is just a minor issue with the staff. Nothing that concerns... It concerns me. 3 words. That's all it took for Malcolm to close his mouth. Mr. Hahn walked toward me with calm, measured steps. His shoes made no sound against the marble floor. His expression was unreadable. No anger, no sympathy, just focus. He stopped directly in front of me. Are you injured? He asked quietly. I shook my head, too surprised to speak. His eyes flicked briefly to my uniform, the wine stains spreading across the white fabric. Then back to my face. I'm fine, I managed. He nodded once, then turned to Malcolm, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. This woman, Mr. Hahn said, gesturing toward me without looking away from Malcolm, is clearly competent. She did not spill your wine. You knocked it over deliberately. Malcolm's jaw tightened. That's not... I watched you do it. The room went deathly quiet. Olivia's hand gripped Malcolm's arm. Maybe we should just move on, she whispered urgently. But Malcolm's pride wouldn't let him back down. With all due respect, Mr. Hahn, you don't know what you saw. Mr. Hahn tilted his head slightly. I know exactly what I saw. He said it so calmly, so simply, but something in his tone made Malcolm take a step back. This is absurd, Malcolm said, louder now, trying to regain control of the room. She's staff. This is between me and the restaurant. No, Mr. Hahn replied. This is between you and me. Malcolm laughed, short, unnervous. Do you even know who I am? Yes. The single word hung in the air like a threat. Mr. Hahn's expression didn't change, but his eyes, dark, cold, calculating, held something that made my stomach flip. You are Malcolm Reed, he continued softly, son of Jonathan Reed, heir to Reed Global Holdings, currently under preliminary federal investigation for offshore money laundering through shell companies in Singapore and Panama. The blood drained from Malcolm's face. The gasps rippled through the room. That's a lie, Malcolm snapped, but his voice cracked. Is it? Mr. Han pulled a phone from his pocket. He tapped the screen once. The large television mounted behind the bar flickered on. Documents filled the screen. Spreadsheets, bank transfers, corporate filings, Reed Global Holdings, Hawthorne Logistics, payments routed through foreign accounts, and then a signature, Malcolm Reed. Olivia stood abruptly, knocking her chair backward. May I turn that off? Theodore Hawthorne's face turned ashen. The city councilman seated near the window suddenly looked very interested in his phone. Malcolm stared at the screen like he'd seen a ghost. Where did you get that? He whispered. Mr. Han didn't answer. He just watched Malcolm with the same calm, deadly focus. And I realized something that made my heart race. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. Mr. Han had come to this dinner for this exact moment. You're bluffing, Malcolm said, but sweat was beginning to bead along his hairline. Mr. Han slipped his phone back into his pocket. I don't bluff. The documents continued playing on the screen. More spreadsheets, more transactions, dates, amounts, account numbers, all tied directly to Reed Global and Hawthorne Logistics. Theodore Hawthorne stood, his face flushed. This is outrageous. Those documents are private corporate evidence, Mr. Han interrupted smoothly. Not the word you're looking for is evidence. The room erupted in whispers. I stood frozen near Malcolm's chair, still holding the stained napkin, watching everything fall apart in real time. Mr. Han turned slowly, addressing the entire table now. 3 years ago, he began, his voice calm and measured. I invested in Reed Global Holdings, not for profit, for proximity. Silence. You see, when someone attempts to undercut my shipping operations in Busan, and I prefer to understand exactly how bold they are. Malcolm's mouth opened, then closed. Olivia grabbed his arm. Don't say anything, she hissed. But Mr. Han wasn't finished. You bribed port officials, he continued, eyes locked on Malcolm. You funded intermediaries who believed my absence from Seoul meant weakness. You moved cargo through lanes I controlled without permission. He took a single step forward. You disrespected me. The way he said it, so quiet, so controlled, was more terrifying than if he'd shouted. This is insane, Malcolm said, his voice rising. Like, you can't just... Can't what? Mr. Han interrupted. Expose illegal activity? Share financial records with federal investigators? The room went cold. Federal investigators? Theodore Hawthorne repeated slowly. Mr. Han's expression didn't change. Yes. And that's when the restaurant doors opened. 2 men in dark suits entered, badges clipped to their belts. FBI. My heart stopped. Malcolm Reed? One of them asked. Malcolm's face went white. Everything happened at once. Olivia grabbed her phone, already ringing, her father's name flashing on the screen. Theodore Hawthorne tried to walk toward the side exit, only to find 2 more agents waiting there. The board members scattered like roaches when the lights come on. One of the agents approached Malcolm. We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with offshore money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit tax evasion. This is a setup, Malcolm shouted, pointing at Mr. Han. He set me up. Mr. Han's expression remained perfectly calm. I exposed what you built, he corrected quietly. The agent pulled out handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Malcolm's eyes darted wildly around the room, looking for support, for allies, for anyone who might help him. No one moved. Then Malcolm's eyes landed on me, still standing there, and still holding the wine-stained napkin. You, he hissed, you did this. I blinked. What? You're working with him, Malcolm's voice cracked. You planned this, Olivia sobbed into her hands. Cameras flashed outside the restaurant windows. Someone had tipped off the press. The same phones that had been recording my humiliation 20 minutes ago were now recording Malcolm in handcuffs. I should have felt satisfied, but all I felt was shock. I started. She didn't do anything, Mr. Han said, his voice cutting through the chaos. You did this to yourself. Malcolm lunged toward him, but the agents held him back. You're going to regret this, Malcolm shouted as they pulled him toward the door. Mr. Han didn't flinch. He just watched, expressionless, as Malcolm Reed, heir to a billion-dollar empire, was dragged out of Varelli's steakhouse in handcuffs. The room emptied quickly after that. Theodore Hawthorne was escorted out by federal agents. Olivia fled through the back exit, still crying, her engagement ring catching the light one last time before she disappeared. The board members scattered without a word. Within 10 minutes, the private dining room was nearly empty. Just me, the manager, trembling near the wall, and Mr. Han. He turned to me slowly. "You should not be here," he said quietly. I stared at him. "I work here." "Not anymore." My breath caught. His eyes softened just slightly. "Oh, you deserve better than this place." And that's when I realized something that made my heart race. He knew me, not just from tonight, from before. "Do I know you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Han's expression shifted. For the first time all night, something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition. 6 years ago, he said quietly. Atlanta, a clinic during a storm. My stomach dropped. Oh God, I remembered. The wounded man, the gunshot. The men who came looking for him. The stranger I hid without asking questions. "That was you," I whispered. He nodded once. "You saved my life." I couldn't breathe. "And tonight," he continued, his voice soft but firm, "I returned the favor." I stood there staring at him, trying to reconcile the man in front of me with the memory from 6 years ago. Back then, he'd been bleeding, desperate, barely conscious. Now he stood in a perfectly tailored suit, completely in control, having just dismantled a billion-dollar empire in under 20 minutes. "You've been planning this," I said slowly. "Yes." "For how long?" 3 years. My mind raced. "You invested in Malcolm's company just to watch him," Mr. Han finished, "to understand his operations, to gather evidence." He said it so calmly, like orchestrating someone's complete destruction was just another Tuesday. "Why?" I asked. His jaw tightened slightly. Because he tried to take what was mine." Mr. Han gestured toward the now empty table. "Malcolm Reed wanted to expand into Asian shipping markets, specifically South Korea. He attempted to bribe officials in Busan. He funded competitors who thought they could challenge my operations." He paused. "He was wrong." I swallowed hard. "So you destroyed him." "I exposed him," Mr. Han corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" His eyes met mine. "One is revenge. The other is justice." I wasn't sure I believed that. But before I could respond, one of the FBI agents approached. "Mr. Han," the agent said with a respectful nod, "we appreciate the cooperation." Cooperation, the word hit me like a punch. I turned to Mr. Han, eyes wide. "You've been working with them?" He didn't answer immediately. The agent continued. "Your evidence was instrumental in building this case. We'll be in touch regarding the trial." Mr. Han nodded once, as the agent left, and I just stared. "You're not just a businessman," I said quietly. "No. What are you?" His expression remained unreadable. "Someone who doesn't forget." That wasn't an answer, but something told me it was all I was going to get. The restaurant manager finally found his courage and hurried over, wringing his hands. "Miss Johns, we had no idea. Please, if there's anything we can do." I held up a hand. "You knew?" I said calmly. He froze. You stood there and watched Malcolm humiliate me. You didn't say a word." "I couldn't. Hawthorne money. The restaurant depends on—" "You knew," I repeated, my voice harder now. "And you did nothing." His face crumpled. Mr. Han stepped forward, his presence immediately silencing the manager. "She won't be returning," Mr. Han said simply. The manager blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Ms. Johns is no longer employed here. Consider this her resignation." My head whipped toward him. "Wait, what?" "But Mr. Han was already pulling something from his jacket pocket. A business card. He held it out to me. I took the card hesitantly. Embossed black lettering on cream cardstock. Junseo Han Private Equity and Hospitality Development. "I'm opening a new hospitality group," he said quietly. "High-end, international, built on respect, not cruelty." I stared at the card. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need someone I trust." My heart pounded. "Yet you don't know me." His expression softened, just barely. "You stood between me and a gun 6 years ago. You treated my wounds without asking who I was or what I'd done. You lied to armed men to protect me." He took a step closer. "I know exactly who you are." Outside, I could hear reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, Malcolm being shoved into a police car. The empire that had humiliated me was collapsing in real time, and the man responsible was offering me a way out. I don't understand, I whispered. Why me? Junseo, because now I knew his real name, held my gaze. Because people like Malcolm Reed see service workers as invisible, disposable. He gestured toward the empty dining room. I see value where others see nothing. I looked down at the business card again. My hands were shaking. What if I say no? Then I respect your decision, he said simply. Yum, but you should know. Malcolm wasn't just laundering money through his company. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Junseo's expression darkened. 2 weeks ago, I discovered he was routing funds through medical clinics in Atlanta. Fake billing schemes, insurance fraud. Oh no. Your mother's clinic was on the list. The world tilted. He was going to frame her? I asked, my voice barely audible. Yes, shut down the clinic, have her arrested. I'd use her as a scapegoat to cover his tracks. Tears stung my eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I handled it, Junseo said quietly. I made sure the investigators knew exactly who was responsible. Your mother's name was cleared before it was ever publicly mentioned. I couldn't breathe. He hadn't just exposed Malcolm tonight. He'd been protecting my family for weeks. Why would you do that? I whispered. Junseo's voice was soft. Us, because you once protected me when you had every reason not to. You know what hurts the most? Not what Malcolm did to me tonight, but realizing he'd planned to destroy my mother, the woman who raised me alone, who worked herself to exhaustion to give me a chance, just to cover his own crimes. If you've ever wanted to see karma delivered with precision, you already know what I felt in that moment. Don't just scroll, subscribe. Because what happens next will remind you that sometimes the people who seem powerless are just waiting for the right moment to take everything back. I placed my hand in Junseo's, not because I fully trusted him, not because I understood everything that had just happened, but because for the first time in 8 months, maybe in my entire life, someone had seen me as more than invisible. Someone had fought for me. His hand was warm, steady. I'll take the job, I said quietly. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. Good. We walked toward the exit together. The restaurant manager stood frozen, watching us pass. The few remaining staff members stared openly. Outside, the scene was chaos. News vans lined the street. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed continuously. Malcolm was already gone, taken away in the back of an FBI vehicle. But Olivia was still there, and standing beside her father's town car, mascara streaking down her face as she screamed into her phone. I don't care what the lawyers say. Fix this. Theodore Hawthorne looked 20 years older than he had an hour ago. When Olivia saw me walking out beside Junseo, she froze. You, Olivia hissed, pointing at me with a shaking hand. This is your fault. I stopped walking. Junseo's hand tightened slightly on mine. A warning, maybe, or reassurance. Was my fault? I repeated calmly. You humiliated Malcolm. You set him up. I stared at her. This woman who had laughed when Malcolm ordered me to my knees, who had called me plain, who had recorded my humiliation on her phone. I didn't humiliate him, I said quietly. He did that himself. Olivia's face twisted. You think you've won? You think walking out with him? She gestured wildly at Junseo. Makes you special. I didn't respond because I didn't need to. And Junseo stepped forward, not aggressively, just enough to put himself slightly between Olivia and me. You should go home, Ms. Hawthorne, he said quietly. Don't tell me what to do, she snapped. Your fiancé is under federal arrest. Your father's company is about to be subpoenaed, and every camera on this street is recording you right now. Olivia glanced around wildly. He was right. Phones were pointed at her. Cameras zoomed in. Reporters inched closer. So I suggest, Junseo continued, his voice never rising, that you leave before you make this worse. Olivia's mouth opened and closed. Then she turned and practically dove into the town car. Theodore Hawthorne followed without a word. The car peeled away from the curb, disappearing into the night. Reporters swarmed immediately. Mr. Hahn, can you comment on your involvement in the Reed investigation? Miss Johns, how long have you known about the money laundering? Is it true you're starting a business together? Junseo guided me smoothly throughout the crowd, his hand never leaving mine. A black car pulled up, Sleek, expensive, windows tinted. The driver opened the door without a word. Junseo gestured for me to enter first. I hesitated, glancing back at Varelli's. The place where I'd been humiliated. The place where I'd felt invisible. The place where everything had changed. And as I slid into the car, I heard one reporter shout a question that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Han, is it true you're connected to organized crime in South Korea?" I froze. Junseo didn't. He simply entered the car behind me and closed the door. The soundproofing was immediate, complete. Inside, everything was quiet. I turned to him slowly. "Is it true?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Would it change your decision?" I thought about that. About Malcolm in handcuffs. About my mother's clinic being protected. About the man who'd spent 3 years gathering evidence just to expose someone who'd tried to humiliate me for sport. "I don't know," I admitted. Junseo nodded slowly. "That's fair." The car pulled away from the curb, leaving the chaos behind. We drove in silence for several minutes. Finally, Junseo spoke. "They thought they were watching you fall tonight." I looked at him. His expression was calm, but there was something sharp beneath it. But they were witnessing their own ending. I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew he was right. Malcolm, Olivia, Theodore, the entire room full of people who'd watched me kneel. They'd all assumed I was powerless. They'd been wrong. And now, sitting beside one of the most dangerous men I'd ever met, I realized something that should have terrified me. I wasn't scared. I was ready for whatever came next. We drove through the city for 20 minutes before either of us spoke again. The lights blurred past the tinted windows. I watched them, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. My uniform was still stained with wine. My hands still trembled slightly, and the man sitting beside me, the man who'd just destroyed a billion-dollar empire, was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "You're afraid of me," Junseo said finally. It wasn't a question. And I turned to face him. Should I be? He considered that for a moment. Probably. At least he was honest. "Why did you really help me tonight?" I asked. "I told you—" "No," I interrupted. "You said you owed me. But people don't spend 3 years planning someone's downfall just to repay a debt." Junseo's jaw tightened slightly. "You don't think they do?" "I think there's more to this." He studied me for a long moment. Then he leaned forward and tapped on the privacy divider. The driver nodded once and turned down a side street. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere we can talk properly." The car pulled up to a building I recognized immediately, the Caldwell, one of the most expensive residential towers in the city. Penthouses here started at $15 million. Junseo got out and extended his hand to help me. I hesitated. "I'm not going to hurt you, Barbara," he said quietly. I took his hand and stepped out. The doorman greeted Junseo by name. The elevator required a keycard to access the top floor. We rode up in silence. When the doors opened, I stepped into the most beautiful apartment I'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city, minimalist furniture, art that probably cost more than my mother's house. "Sit," Junseo said, gesturing toward the sofa. "I'll make tea." I sat, still wearing my stained uniform, feeling completely out of place. But Junseo returned a few minutes later with 2 cups of tea. He handed me one and sat across from me. "6 years ago," he began, "I came to Atlanta on business, the kind of business that made certain people nervous." I sipped my tea and waited. "There was a contract dispute, money that was owed to my organization in Seoul. The people who owed it decided they'd rather kill me than pay." He said it so matter-of-factly, like discussing murder was normal. 3 men followed me from a meeting. They shot me outside a hotel. I managed to get away, but I was bleeding badly. I remembered that night, the storm, the man stumbling into the clinic, soaked and pale. "I didn't know where I was," Junseo continued. "I just saw lights and walked inside." "You were alone," he said, looking at me now. "The clinic was supposed to be closed, but you'd stayed late to finish paperwork." I nodded slowly. I remember." "You didn't ask questions. You just started treating me. When I tried to explain, you told me to be quiet and let you work." A faint smile crossed his face. "You were bossy." "You were bleeding to death," I said. "Yes, and you saved me." He paused. "But then they came looking." I remembered that part too. 3 men, wet from the rain, eyes cold, They'd walked into the clinic like they owned it. "We're looking for someone," the leader had said. "Korean man. This gunshot wound, you seen him?" I'd been terrified, but I'd looked him straight in the eye and said, "Just me here tonight." He hadn't believed me. He'd pressed a gun to my temple and asked again. And I'd lied again. "Why did you do that?" Junso asked now, his voice soft. I met his eyes. "Because you needed help. You could have died. So could you." He shook his head slowly. Most people would have given me up." "I'm not most people." "When they finally left," Junso continued, "I knew I had to disappear. If they found you again, they'd kill you for helping me." He looked down at his tea. "So I left, before you came back to check on me. I wrote you a note and I left." "I kept that note," I admitted. His head lifted sharply. "You did?" "For 2 years, then I threw it away because I thought I'd never see you again." Silence settled between us. "Well, I wanted to come back," he said quietly, "to thank you properly, but it wasn't safe, not for you. And now? Now the men who tried to kill me are dead. The contract dispute was resolved, and I've built something strong enough that no one tries to kill me anymore." He paused. "They just try to steal from me instead." "Malcolm," I said, understanding. Junseo nodded. "When I discovered he was moving into Korean shipping, I started investigating. And I found the money laundering almost immediately. But then I found something else." He set his tea down. "I found your name." My heart stopped. "What?" "Malcolm's company had flagged your mother's clinic for investigation. They were planning to use it as a front for insurance fraud. Your mother would have been arrested. The clinic shut down, her medical license revoked." Tears stung my eyes. "But you stopped it." "I made sure the right people knew the truth. That Malcolm was the criminal. Not your mother." He leaned forward. "And when I learned you were working at Varelli's, the same restaurant where Malcolm was having his celebration dinner, I knew it was time." "You planned everything," I whispered. "Yes. The investment, the evidence, showing up tonight. Yes. You destroyed him because he tried to hurt my family." Junseo's expression hardened. "I destroyed him because he tried to hurt you. The money laundering, the shipping lanes, plus the federal charges. Those were just convenient." I stared at him. "The moment he made you kneel," Junseo said quietly, "he signed his own death warrant." The way he said it, so calm, so absolute, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else, protected, valued, seen. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Junseo met my eyes. "I want you to trust me the way you did 6 years ago. When you didn't know my name or what I'd done, well, when you just saw someone who needed help. I didn't know you were dangerous then. And now that you do?" I thought about Malcolm in handcuffs, about Olivia's tears, about the empire that had crumbled in minutes. "Now I know what you're capable of," I said slowly. "Does that scare you?" I should have said yes, but I didn't. "It should," I admitted. "But it doesn't." Something shifted in Junseo's expression. Relief, maybe, or something deeper. "Good," he said softly. Because I need you to understand something, Barbara." He leaned forward. "I am not a good man. I have done things that would horrify you. I operate in shadows that most people never see." He paused. "But I protect what's mine. And 6 years ago, you became mine to protect." My breath caught. "I didn't ask for that." "No, you just earned it." We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, I spoke. "What happens now?" Junseo stood and walked to the window. "Now you decide if you can work with someone like me. If you can build something alongside someone who exists in the gray spaces of the world." He turned back to me. "I meant what I said. I'm opening a hospitality group. Legitimate business, but I need someone who understands respect, who values dignity, who won't tolerate cruelty disguised as power." "Why me?" "Because you've lived it. You know what it feels like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be humiliated." His voice softened. "And because I trust you. In my world, that's rarer than money." I stood slowly, walked to the window beside him. The city stretched out below us, endless lights, endless possibilities. "If I say yes," I said quietly, "I need to know the truth, all of it. Who you really are, what you really do." Junseo nodded. "Fair. And I need your word that my mother stays safe, that she's protected, always." "You have it." I took a deep breath. "Mom, then I'm in." I woke up on Junseo's guest room bed, still in my uniform, with sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed everything. Then I saw the business card on the nightstand. Junseo Han. It was real, all of it. I found clothes laid out for me, simple, expensive, in exactly my size. That should have unsettled me, but somehow, it didn't. Junseo was in the kitchen when I emerged, and he'd changed into this simple black shirt and slacks. No tie, no jacket. He looked different, less controlled, more human. "Coffee?" he asked. "Please?" He poured me a cup and gestured toward the table. "We need to discuss details." Always business with him. I sat. "The hospitality group launches in 3 months," Junseo began. 5 properties across 3 cities, high-end hotels, exclusive restaurants, private clubs. He slid a tablet across the table. Architectural renderings, floor plans, market analyses. "This is incredible," I said, scrolling through the images. "It's ambitious," he corrected. "And it requires someone who understands service from the inside. Someone who knows what dignity looks like." He paused. "That's you." "What would I do exactly?" "Director of Operations. You'd oversee staff training, establish service standards, handle complaints, ensure quality control." I looked up sharply. "Mom, that's a huge position." "Yes. I've only worked as a waitress." "You've worked in service for 8 years. You've been disrespected, overlooked, and underestimated. You know exactly how staff should and shouldn't be treated." He leaned forward. "I don't need someone with an MBA. I need someone with empathy and backbone. You have both." "What if I fail?" I asked quietly. Junseo's expression didn't change. Then you learn and try again. You're trusting me with millions of dollars. I'm trusting you with something more important, my reputation." That hit differently. "Why does this matter so much to you?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "Because I've spent my entire life in a world that values power over people, where strength means cruelty and success means stepping on others." His voice lowered. "I want to build something different. Something that proves you can be successful without being cruel." I stared at him. This man who'd dismantled an empire out of revenge was talking about dignity. The contradiction was staggering. "You're more complicated than I thought," I said. A faint smile crossed his face. "You have no idea." "There are conditions," Junseo said. Of course there were. What kind of conditions? "You'll need to relocate, at least initially. I oversee the flagship property in New York while we establish systems." "New York?" "Yes, housing provided. Salary is negotiable, but generous." He named a figure that made my head spin. "That's market rate for the position," he said simply. I couldn't breathe. That was more money than my mother made in 2 years. "What else?" I managed. "You'll work closely with me. Daily meetings, strategic planning, on-call availability. So I'd see you constantly." "Yes." Something in the way he said it made my pulse quicken. "Is that a problem?" he asked. "I don't know yet." Honest answer. I stood and walked to the window. The city looked different in daylight. Less magical, more real. "This is happening very fast," I said. "Yes. Yesterday I was a waitress. Today I'm being offered a 6-figure job running a hospitality empire." "Yes." I turned to face him. "Now, why do I feel like there's something you're not telling me?" Junseo's expression shifted. "Because there is." My stomach tightened. "What?" He stood and walked over to me. "Malcolm isn't the only enemy I've made. There will be people who see you with me and assume you're a weakness, a target." Fear crept up my spine. "You're saying I'll be in danger." "I'm saying I'll make sure you're protected, always, but you need to know the risk." I should have walked away. Any sane person would have. But I thought about my mother's clinic, about Malcolm's plan to destroy her, about Junseo spending 3 years gathering evidence just to protect my family, about him kneeling beside me 6 years ago, bleeding and broken, trusting me to save him. "If I do this," I said slowly, "I'm all in, no halfway, no backing out when things get hard. I wouldn't expect anything less." "And you promise my mother stays safe, no matter what." "I promise." I extended my hand. Then let's build something." Junseo took my hand. His grip was firm, warm. Welcome to the family, Barbara Johns. 3 days later, I stood in front of Varelli's Steakhouse one last time. The restaurant was closed, federal investigation signs plastered across the doors. The manager had been arrested for tax evasion. 2 board members from that dinner had resigned from their companies. Olivia Hawthorne had fled to London, and Malcolm Reed was awaiting trial. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt ready for whatever came next. When I finally stood my ground, people called me lucky. They said I got a fairy tale ending, but they didn't see the choice I made. To trust someone dangerous, to step into a world I didn't understand, to risk everything for a chance at something better. If you've ever had to choose peace over comfort, this is your space. Subscribe, not for me, but for every person who's ever bet on themselves when the odds seemed impossible. Because what happens next will test everything I thought I knew about power, trust, and who I really am. New York was overwhelming. The flagship property, the Sinclair, was a converted historic building in Midtown. 23 floors, 200 rooms, 3 restaurants, a rooftop bar, and I was responsible for all of it. Junseo had arranged everything. An apartment 3 blocks away, a wardrobe appropriate for the position, an assistant who'd worked in luxury hospitality for 15 years. It should have felt like a dream, but something felt off. I was reviewing staff files when I noticed it. Background checks, every single employee, some going back years, not unusual for hospitality, but these were thorough, almost invasive. Family histories, financial records, social connections. Why are these so detailed? I asked my assistant Miriam. As she hesitated. Mr. Han is particular about security. This goes beyond security. She looked uncomfortable. You'd have to ask him. So I did. I found Junseo in his office on the 23rd floor. He was on a call, in Korean, and gestured for me to wait. I noticed something on his desk. A file, with my name on it. My stomach dropped. When he ended the call, I picked up the file. What is this? Junseo's expression didn't change. Background information. On me? Yes. I opened it. Everything was there. My entire life. School records, medical history, my mother's finances, even photos I'd posted on social media years ago. You investigated me, I said, my voice shaking. I investigate everyone. Everyone doesn't get a 6-figure job from you. Junseo stood slowly. Sit down, Barbara. I don't want to sit down. Yeah, I want to know why you have a file on me like I'm some kind of criminal. Because I needed to know if you could be trusted. You said you already trusted me. I trust your character, he said calmly. But I needed to verify there were no vulnerabilities, no debts, no enemies, no complications that could be exploited. I stared at him. Exploited by who? He walked to the window. And by people who would use you to get to me. There's something you need to understand, Junseo said quietly. What I did to Malcolm Reed has consequences. What kind of consequences? His family has connections, political allies, business partners in countries where the law doesn't apply the same way. My blood ran cold. You're saying they'll retaliate. I'm saying they'll try, he turned back to me. And when they do, they'll look for weaknesses. People I care about, assets I value, leverage they can use. And you think I'm a weakness. I think you're someone I've publicly aligned myself with. That makes you a target. Why didn't you tell me this before? I asked. Would you have taken the job? Honest question, I thought about it. I don't know. Exactly. I felt manipulated, trapped. So what now? I asked. Do I have guards following me? Cameras watching my apartment? Junseo's silence was answer enough. Oh my God, you've been watching me. I've been protecting you, without asking. Would you have agreed? That's not the point. It's exactly the point, he said, his voice hardening. You don't know how dangerous this world is, Barbara. You don't know what people are capable of when they want revenge. 2 days ago, Junseo continued, someone tried to access your mother's medical records. They were tracing her location. Everything stopped. At what? They were looking for leverage. A way to threaten you, to make you vulnerable. Tears stung my eyes. Is she safe? Yes, I had her moved to a private facility under a different name. She thinks it's a medical conference. She's fine. I couldn't breathe. You moved my mother without telling me? I kept her alive. The words hung in the air, cold, true, terrifying. I can't do this. I whispered. Junseo's expression didn't change. Yes. Yeah, you can. You don't know that. I know you stood between me and armed men when you had nothing to gain. I know you lied to protect a stranger. I know you're stronger than you think. He stepped closer. And I know that leaving now won't make you safer. It'll just make you easier to find. My hands shook. So I'm trapped. You're protected, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? His voice softened. I won't force you to stay. If you want to leave, I'll arrange security for you and your mother. I'll make sure you're safe. He paused. But I'd rather you stayed. Not because I need you to, because I want you to choose this. Choose me. Choose us. I looked at the file on his desk, my entire life reduced to data points and risk assessments. Then I looked at him, this man who'd destroyed an empire for me, who'd protected my mother without being asked, who saw me as valuable enough to fight for. If I stay, I said slowly, no more secrets, no more files without my knowledge, no more decisions about my life made without me. Junseo nodded. Agreed. And my mother gets told the truth. She deserves to know. Agreed. I took a deep breath. Then I'm staying. Relief crossed his face, just for a second. Good. But deep down I wondered, was I staying because I wanted to, or because I didn't have a choice anymore? The Sinclair opened to incredible reviews. A Forbes called it a masterclass in luxury service. The New York Times praised our revolutionary approach to hospitality. Reservations were booked solid for 6 months, and I was exhausted, not from the work, from pretending everything was normal. Junseo and I fell into a rhythm, morning meetings to review operations, afternoon site visits, evening debriefs over dinner in his penthouse office. We worked well together, too well, yet he anticipated my needs before I voiced them. I understood his silences without explanation. It should have been professional. It wasn't. It happened on a Tuesday. We were reviewing quarterly projections when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. I need to take this, he said, standing abruptly. He left the room, speaking in rapid Korean. I heard his tone shift, anger, then something else, fear. When he returned 10 minutes later, his face was carefully blank. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing that concerns you. Don't do that. He looked at me. Do what? Shut me out. You promised no more secrets. Junseo sat down slowly. There's been a development in Seoul. A rival organization is challenging my territory. How serious? Serious enough that I need to return. Soon. My stomach tightened. For how long? I don't know. Silence stretched between us. You're worried, I said quietly. I'm cautious. That's not the same thing. He met my eyes. No, it's not. Talk to me, I said. Really talk to me. Not as your employee. As someone who... I stopped. As someone who what? Cared? Trusted him? Was falling for him? Junseo's expression softened. You want to know what I'm afraid of? Yes. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I'm afraid that I've spent so long building power that I've forgotten what it feels like to be vulnerable, to care about someone more than strategy. My breath caught. And now, I whispered. Now I have something to lose again. He looked at me. You. I should have pulled back, maintained professional distance. Instead, I moved closer. When did this become more than protection? I asked. The moment I saw Malcolm make you kneel. His voice was raw. I've done terrible things, Barbara. I've hurt people, destroyed lives, built an empire on fear and control. He paused. Yeah, but watching him humiliate you, someone who'd saved my life, who'd shown me kindness when I deserved none, it broke something in me. Tears slid down my cheeks. You didn't do all this just to repay a debt? No. Then why? He reached out and gently wiped my tears. Because I needed you to see me the way you did 6 years ago. Not as a criminal, not as something dangerous, just as someone worth saving. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Choosing this? Choosing me? I thought about Malcolm in handcuffs, about my mother safe in a protected facility, about the staff at the Sinclair who looked at me with respect instead of contempt, about the man in front of me who'd turned his entire world inside out because someone had hurt me. I don't regret choosing myself, I said. You just happened to be the door I walked through. He smiled, rare, genuine. Then I'm grateful to be the door. His phone rang again, this time, and he silenced it. I need to leave tomorrow, he said. For Seoul? Yes. Take me with you. He looked shocked. Absolutely not. Why? Because it's dangerous, because you'd be exposed, because you don't trust me in your world, I finished. That's not. Then prove it. Let me in, all the way, not just the business parts, the real parts. Junseo was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. If you come, you'll see things that can't be unseen. You'll meet people who won't understand why you're there. You'll be in a world where the rules you know don't apply. I understand. Do you? I met his eyes. You told me once that I became yours to protect 6 years ago. Well, you became mine too, whether you wanted it or not. Something shifted in his expression. You mean that? Yes. He stood and pulled me to my feet. Then pack a bag. We leave at dawn. That night, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address. Inside, a single piece of paper, handwritten. You think you've won, but you're with a monster. He'll destroy you too. It's only a matter of time. M.R. Malcolm from prison, still trying to break me. I crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash. Then I texted Junseo. I'm ready, see you at dawn. Whatever was waiting in Seoul, I'd face it. Because I wasn't the same woman who'd knelt on that restaurant floor. I was something different now, something stronger, and I wasn't afraid anymore. Seoul was nothing like I expected, and everything Junseo had warned me about. I saw the meetings behind closed doors, the men who spoke in code, the transactions that happened in shadows. I met his associates, men who looked at me with curiosity, suspicion, and occasionally respect. I learned what it meant to exist in a world where power was currency and loyalty was survival. And I realized something that should have terrified me. I fit. We returned to New York 3 months later. The Sinclair was thriving, 2 more properties had opened, a third was in development, but I was different, harder, sharper, more aware of what existed beneath the surface of polite society. Junseo noticed. You've changed, he said one evening as we reviewed expansion plans. Is that bad? No, it's necessary. I looked at him. Do you ever regret bringing me into this? Never. Even though I'm not the same person, he smiled. You're exactly the same person. You've just stopped pretending the world is fair. Malcolm's trial ended that week. 7 years in federal prison. Olivia's family company had dissolved. Theodore Hawthorne died of a heart attack 2 months after the arrest. The empire that had humiliated me no longer existed. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing. They'd become irrelevant. The letter arrived at my office. From Malcolm, I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. You think you won, but you're with a monster. He'll destroy you too. One day you'll see what I saw. That you're just another investment to him. Another asset to protect. And when you're no longer useful, he'll discard you like everyone else. Watch your back, Barbara. Men like Junseo Han don't love. They own. Malcolm Reed. I read it 3 times. Then I walked to Junseo's office. Malcolm sent me a letter, I said, tossing it on his desk. Junseo read it without expression. And, he asked. And I want to know if he's right. About what specifically? About you, about us, and about whether I'm just another asset you're protecting until I stop being useful. Junseo set the letter down carefully. Do you believe that? I don't know what to believe anymore. He stood and walked around the desk. Then let me be clear. You are not an asset. You are not an investment. You are not something I protect out of obligation. He paused. You are the only person in my life who saw me as human before they saw me as powerful. The only person who risked everything for a stranger. The only person I trust completely. His voice dropped. Malcolm is right about one thing. I am a monster. I've done monstrous things. I will continue to do them. He took my hands. But I have never lied to you. And I'm not lying now when I say you're the only thing in my life that isn't transactional. Tears slid down my cheeks. I'm scared, I admitted. Of what? Of how much power you have over me. Of how much I've changed. Of what it means that I don't regret any of it. Junseo pulled me closer. You think I'm not scared? I've spent my entire life controlling everything. And then you walked into my world and made me care about something other than power. He wiped my tears. You terrify me, Barbara Johns, because you're the one weakness I refuse to eliminate. That night, we stood on the rooftop of the Sinclair. The city stretched below us, endless lights, endless possibilities. They'll always wonder, I said quietly, if you did all this for justice, or for me. Junseo's voice was soft. Let them wonder, I smiled. Good answer. He pulled me against him. Do you know what Malcolm got wrong? What? He thinks the difference between protection and possession is clear. That one is noble and the other is toxic. I looked up at him. And you don't? I think the difference is choice. I protect you because you let me, not because I own you. He paused. And you chose me knowing exactly what I am. I'm not the woman I was, I said. No, yet you're better. I've seen terrible things. And you're still here. I've made choices I can't take back. Neither have I. I pressed my forehead against his chest. What if Malcolm's right? What if this destroys me? Junseo tilted my chin up. Then we'll burn together. And somehow that was enough. 6 months later, Malcolm was released on early parole. He disappeared. Rumor was he'd fled to South America. I didn't care. But the Sinclair Empire had expanded to 12 properties across 6 countries. My mother had retired, fully funded by the trust Junseo had established. And I'd become someone I barely recognized. Someone powerful, someone respected, someone who'd taken her pain and turned it into purpose. People ask me sometimes if I regret that night at Varelli's, if I wish Malcolm had never humiliated me. And the truth is, no, because that humiliation led me here. As to power, I never knew I could have. To a man who saw my worth when others saw nothing. To a life I built from the ashes of who I used to be. Malcolm thought he was putting me in my place. But all he did was show me I didn't have a place. I had to create one. And I did. Junseo found me on the rooftop one last time. Penny for your thoughts? I smiled. Just thinking about revenge. And? It's not about payback. It's about peace. He pulled me close. And have you found it? I looked out at the city we'd built together. Yes, I have. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about becoming so powerful they become irrelevant. It's about choosing peace over punishment. And if this story touched you, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from nothing, subscribe right now, because somewhere out there, another person is watching in silence, needing a reminder that they're not alone. That humiliation doesn't define you, that power isn't given, it's taken, and your one click might help them find the strength to take theirs. Hit subscribe, because the best revenge is becoming unforgettable.